ANZ's Tilt session. Thank you for all coming along today. For those that don't know me, I'm Susie Jury. I'm one of the Better Business Agility leads, and I'll be hosting today's session. For those that haven't attended before, you might be wondering what Tilt is. It's more than just another acronym. It's really a time to get to know each other better and to know our leaders a little bit better. So today we've got the pleasure of hearing from our very own Beth, and she has been an agilist, a leadership and team coach, and a thought leader for over 20 years. Her most recent talk was delivered in May at an Agile Leadership Conference, and she's going to share that with us today. So I've had the privilege of working with Beth for just over a year, and she continually inspires me with her relentless commitment to transparency, positive behaviours, continuous improvement, and she continues to strive to make work a place where we want to come on Monday mornings, which I dearly needed this morning. Since today's talk is in a TED format, I'm just going to encourage you guys to jot down your questions or put them in the chat, and I'll get to them at the end. But without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Beth.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you, everybody. Look, I really appreciate you taking time today. Like Susie mentioned, this is going to be a little bit of a departure from what we've done from previous tilts, because I just wanted to share this talk with you. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. And a lot of people couldn't come to that conference, so this is just one more mechanism to kind of get the word out. But I'm going to share my screen. As we do, we know that PowerPoint is our favorite, so hopefully you can all see that. And like Susie said, if you wait till questions at the end, that would be fabulous, just because it is in that TED style. So, and thank you, Susie, for that wonderful introduction. Look, I'm sure you're all asking yourselves, what could we possibly learn from the Mafia to help us cultivate communities? Well, hopefully by the end of today, you're going to know more. This quote from Tony Soprano highlights just one aspect of building a strong sense of community: support systems. The same is true for our organizations. How our employees feel supported goes a long way to making or breaking community at work. But what is community? The root word is from Latin. It's called communis, meaning common or shared. And geographic location doesn't have to be physical. Look at us today, right? Technology connects us with people anywhere in the world. But the essence of a community lies in the shared connection or bond between its members. Community is also an accelerator for happiness. They are inseparable. It's about caring for others and allowing others to care for us. So in this context, how many communities do you belong to? Let's just see a show of hands. You can react. Is it 1 to 5? 6 to 10? More than 10? Yeah, more than 20? When I asked myself this question, I counted 24 different communities. Now, communities may form based on common interests, but they are built on trust and safety. This is especially true in my caving and diving communities, where I'm literally putting my life in someone else's hands. But trust and safety doesn't have to be tied to life and death. And Burning Man is an example of this. And if you don't know what Burning Man is, you can look it up, but not on your work computer, okay? Now, I participated in this festival before they allowed internet and social media access, and it was understood that what happened at Burning Man stayed at Burning Man. And after moving to New Zealand, I became part of the Agile community. First with Assurity, the consultancy, then with Agile Auckland and Business Agility. I even found an amazing community at Pacifica, which is a high-rise in the Auckland CBD. For those of you in the Auckland office, you can see it from our building. You can find community in the most surprising places. You just have to be open to it. But there is one community not mentioned here. And it was a community that was part of my childhood, but one we weren't allowed to talk about. So this elaborate wedding took place 1 month after the stock market crash in 1929, which was the start of the Great Depression. In the center are my grandparents, John and Rose, and on either side of them are Russell Buffalino and his wife, Carrie. The Buffalinos are also godparents to my Uncle Jimmy, the youngest of my grandparents' 5 boys. Now, does the name Buffalino sound familiar to anyone? How many of you have seen the movie The Irishman? It's quite a long movie. It's a Scorsese special, but it's based on a book by Charles Brandt called I Heard You Paint Houses. Now, I heard you paint houses is Mafia speak for I heard you make people go away permanently. And it's the story of how mob boss Buffalino, who's played by Joe Pesci in the movie, put a hit on the Teamsters union leader Jimmy Hoffa that became one of the most enduring and captivating unsolved mysteries in the US. Now, during our childhood, we all knew something was going on with the family. There were always whispers of Grandpop and his time in New York. Like most Italians, my family's ancestors emigrated to the US and landed in New York. They settled in upstate, in Buffalo, right on the Canadian border. During Prohibition, the Mafia viewed this area as a prime location to bring in alcohol from Canada. In fact, Buffalino laughingly told the story to my uncle of how he remembered my grandfather in his wedding tux cleaning out milk jugs to smuggle in alcohol for the wedding. Today, I'm going to share with how the threads of my Mafia heritage influence my passion for seeking and creating community. So this is my family, circa 1978. Groovy outfits, I know. I grew up just outside of Washington, D.C., in a typical suburban neighborhood. My grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins all lived within a few blocks of us. Our house was the central hub of activity for the neighborhood, with all of our friends coming over to play hide and seek and kick the can. When I was a kid, on the porch culture was the norm all across America. Families hung out on their front porches, and all the children were raised by the collective. No cell phones were needed. Everybody always knew where we were. Sounds pretty idyllic, right? I definitely felt connected and part of something bigger. This was my community. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. My grandfather's involvement with Buffalino in that life influenced the way he raised his 5 boys, my father being the oldest, which in turn shaped the way my father ran his family. If you're familiar at all with Mafia culture or seen any of the countless movies or shows, Godfather, Casino, Sopranos, you know it's a boys' club. All the power is held by men. The women were there to have kids, keep a good home, and support their men. Now, being the youngest girl in this family was rough, especially after all my sisters moved away to go to uni. I was left alone with my mother to take care of my father and brothers. My father's strict rules kept me away from my friends and activities outside the house. My world, my community began to shrink. I knew I had to escape. As soon as I was able, I packed up my things and left, and never went back. I went against the family in my father's eyes, so going back was never an option. Unlike other communities where you can move in and out, some communities are more rigid, which brings us to the Mafia. So look, the Mafia operates outside of legal and ethical boundaries, but at its heart, the Mafia is a community. And there are 4 principles that form the basis for any community. And here they are. The Mafia excels at creating loyalty and belonging. There's a camaraderie among members. Loyalty is not optional and is the cornerstone of their community. Loyalty is enforced through strict codes of conduct and traditions, sealed through blood oaths, pins, rings, and other symbolic gestures. It's a brotherhood. Once you're accepted, you are family, and you are in for life. as long as you don't do anything to go against the family. A big part of communities is that they are a support network for their members. In the Mafia, that support doesn't stop at geographical borders. It spans all across the globe. Now, this may come as financial assistance, protection of territory, or partnering in illegal activities, painting houses. In most organized communities, there's clear hierarchy in leadership, with leaders or a committee at the top who make decisions and oversee the group's activities. In the Mafia, this leadership is based on power, fear, and intimidation. And a lot of the time, you don't even see the real leader. Delegates handle communication and give orders to shield the boss at the top. And the Mafia definitely creates a shared identity and purpose that unites its members. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a brotherhood. Their purpose is to protect what they have and grow their criminal empires. More power, more money, more territory. Most members start out as soldiers or pawns and work their way up to running their own crews. But not everyone ascends through the ranks, but this never affects your identity in the community. Do any of these resonate with you? Does your organization have similar principles? Now, the methods may be different, I hope, but some of these community forming ideals might be the same. Now, let's have a look how we can leverage these concepts to create strong communities at work. So, what can companies do to create a sense of loyalty and belonging? I don't really want to take a blood oath or swear fealty, but we can promote open communication, right? Communication is so important, and it comes from the same root word as community. We can encourage open and transparent communication where employees feel safe sharing ideas, feedback, and concerns. Scrum Alliance and the Business Agility Institute just published their Skills in the New World of Work report for 2023. The top human skill continues to be communication. And communication is more likely to pay off than any other skill. Look, we should acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of individual employees and teams, recognizing achievements, milestones, and efforts to create that culture of appreciation and mutual respect. These don't have to be grand gestures. A simple thank you is just as valuable. And we must create a welcoming and inclusive work environment where all employees feel valued and respected. We have to encourage diverse perspectives and experiences to enrich the community. Now, this is about diversity of thought, not just race, culture, sexual orientation. We have to encourage differing viewpoints and ensure every voice is heard. Simon Sinek says that in meetings, make sure everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice. And how can we support our people so they don't just survive, but thrive? If we create a collaborative work environment where employees are encouraged to work together, share knowledge, and support each other in achieving common goals, we'll really get that sense of community. We have to provide opportunities for cross-departmental collaboration and teamwork. And don't forget to support your teams with communities centered around disciplines, chapters, guilds, communities of practice, the COEs. We're starting to see this more and more. And if we facilitate social connections, that'll also help our employees feel supported. Organizing social events, team building activities, and networking opportunities to allow those employees to connect on a personal level outside of work. We have to bring back humanity to the office, foster friendships and camaraderie to strengthen the bonds within the community. And you all have heard me say this 1,000 times, but feedback is a gift. Unfortunately, it's the gift no one wants to open, but we have to make feedback part of the organizational DNA. As a leader, You should continuously solicit feedback from employees about their experiences and be willing to adapt based on their input and make everything transparent. We have improvement boards where we can identify improvements through retros, PIRs, and facilitated feedback sessions. And we can capture everything in JIRA to action, escalate, and create accountability. Just remember, we improve together, we succeed together. Now, in a perfect world, organizational structures would flatten, reducing hierarchy and improving flow. But here are some things we can do right now as leaders, or you can hold your leaders accountable for, to create community at work. Empathetic leadership involves understanding, acknowledging, and responding to the emotions and experiences of your people, prioritizing their well-being, and putting people over process. Let go of control and be vulnerable. Allow people to bring their whole selves to work. Don't expect people to leave emotions at the door. Do you have colleagues that are completely different at work than in a social setting? I personally can't imagine how exhausting that must be. Authentic leadership builds trust, which is the foundation for strong communities. And hopefully, we've all heard of Dan Pink's Autonomy, Mastery, and Purpose. If you haven't, there's a really good YouTube video on it. But we can help with mastery through the support network centered around disciplines. And I'll share some ideas around purpose shortly. But what about autonomy? I don't know about you, but that word scares most leadership teams and conjures up images of people doing whatever they want. Think of a children's birthday party after the cake is served. To create strong teams or community, we as leaders need to be relentless on achieving alignment across the organization to achieve our common purpose, and then push the decisions down to where the work is being done. It's our job to remove barriers through alignment and give our employees agency to deliver. Letting go of control to break the cycle of learned helplessness, or killing the baby birds, as I like to say. Now, Gemba walks and skip levels, again, this is important. Let's get up from our desks and out of our offices and walk around to really connect with our people. Go to where the work is. If your teams are using Agile frameworks, the opportunities are already there. Go to a stand-up, attend sharing and caring sessions, whatever that is, reviews, showcases, and schedule skip levels, and encourage your leaders to do the same. No more whitewashing and filtering information. Go directly to the source. And I've noticed through the many organizations I've worked for and with, organizations tend to focus only on the brand identity for our customers. But what about our brand identity for our employees? I really hope that one day we can stop calling employees resources. It's definitely not my favorite. At Nike, everyone is an athlete. At Disney, everyone is a cast member. Creating shared identity can bring community to your culture. And if we define shared goals and values, that's fundamental. We establish those clear goals, values, and a shared purpose that align with the organization's mission and vision. We have to communicate these to all employees to create a sense of common direction and identity. Now, I'm not talking about posters on a wall. I'm talking about the North Star. Do you know our North Star? And clear roles and accountabilities. This is the number one thing I hear at our organization and at many organizations I've worked with. Make sure everyone understands not just what their role is, but also how they are expected to interact with others, and hold people accountable. Address bad behaviors immediately and ensure there are consequences. Now, not mafia consequences, but one person can take down an entire team. What are you willing to tolerate? Tolerating bad behavior and not holding people accountable for their commitments sends a clear signal to the other employees and determines an organization's culture. One of my favorite questions to ask leaders is that thing, whatever it is, decision, behavior, interaction, language, is that thing bringing us closer to the organization we want to be or dragging us further away? So as you go through your day to day, think about that and ask those questions. And we have to shift language from me to we. Language is paramount in making everyone feel like they are part of something bigger than themselves. Removing all language and behavior that creates the us versus them in your organization can go a long way to fostering a strong sense of community. Some organizations I've worked with have a no they day where no one is allowed to use the word they for an entire day. And as a leader, we have to ensure everyone feels involved. Ask questions. What have I missed? Is there a different perspective? Encourage dissent and practice. Now, David Marquet uses dissent cards. It's something that's really, really fabulous. It's almost like debate. You have to give that differing opinion. We need to start practicing this in order to make it the norm. Also, ask for and offer feedback early and often. We have the tools at ANZ to do this easily. And importantly, admit when you've made a mistake, because all of these things tell employees we are in this together. And honestly, we need community now more than ever, not just at work, but in every aspect of our lives. Now, this data is from the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report for 2024. They annually identify and analyze the most pressing global risks facing the world. These are things that negatively impact a significant amount of global GDP, population, or natural resources. Notice the 2-year outlook. These things are already happening. We can't afford to wait for another cyclone or pandemic to force us into cooperation and connection. And this year's report, more than ever, shows a significant increase in the interconnections of all these risks, transcending borders and requiring coordinated international efforts to mitigate. The world community must come together through collaboration, collective action, resource sharing, and knowledge exchange to address these most pressing challenges facing humanity. And I'm going to wrap up with this. Look, I love this quote from Denise Hamilton. It's from her book, Indivisible, where she shares the story about a diverse community in Los Angeles facing challenges with gentrification, immigration issues, and racial tensions. At the heart of the narrative is the theme of interconnectedness of individuals within a community and the power of solidarity in overcoming adversity. In a world where people are increasingly divided, our strength lies in our unity. Together, we are indivisible. And it sums up my life. After losing my family community, I've always tried to join or create new communities to be a part of, to feel connected and a sense of belonging. It's been the focus of not just my personal life, but my professional life as well. It's why I'm so passionate about creating and nurturing great teams to form connected communities in organizations. And I ask you, what will you do in the next 2 days to help create community here at ANZ? What about the next 2 weeks, 2 months? Take a chance, connect, commune, and realize we are all in this together. One great, big, fabulous community. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, so much for sharing your past and insights. I'd like to open the floor now for any questions. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask Beth about her experiences with the Mafia communities? I'm going to touch very carefully on that one. I still don't know the relationship's still there or Hopefully not so much these days.
No, not so much, not so much. It's not why I moved to New Zealand, but it helps.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Who were you in the photo?
The family
You said
one,
you
I
were the
was the one, I was
youngest.
the really unhappy girl on the left in the yellow dress. I loved that dress, but I hated that picture. But anyway, that was me.
And how many brothers and sisters did you have?
There's 14 of us. Just a small Catholic family. Yeah. That's why I'm so shy.
I've got a question for you if nobody else does at the moment. So, Beth, if you were talking to Antonia and you were thinking about communities in ANZ and what you've experienced in your past companies and obviously family life, what would be the number one thing you'd talk to her about as we are today?
Look, safety and connection, right? And coming down, like I would love to see the execs not have that floor. I would abolish level 31, to be honest. Because I think the information's getting filtered. There's just there's so many layers, right, until the information gets up to NZLT. So it would be great to see more of that, like coming to stand-ups and just hearing it directly from the teams. Yeah, instead of packs and steercos. And I mean, I know that we work in a highly regulated business, but the way we work together can change. So that's what I would tell her, to come down, and that whole team, to be honest.
Yeah, likewise. I didn't even know where level 31 was. I pressed the button and I could only get up to 30. I couldn't quite understand what was going on. I thought somebody was playing a joke on me until I
There's
realized.
only four glass
Yeah,
doors you have to
yeah,
get through to get up there, but that's all right.
exactly. Yeah. Right. Any other questions? There's got to be some out there.
So Beth, I know that you're really great at making conversation with strangers, and you did talk about how you not in this talk, but you have talked about how when you get in a lift, you're the one that talks to everybody. How do you get that conversation started? What are some of the topics that you'd bring up to a total stranger in a lift? What's your favorite?
Well, look, I mean, it's easy. If they're carrying a motorcycle helmet, like, oh, do you have a safe ride in? Just like you
Station.
just look, you observe, like, oh, where'd you get that cup of coffee? And, it's just, it doesn't have to be big. And it really catches people off guard, because most people will have their headsets in or they're facing the front yeah, I thank you, Laura, because I did do a podcast on this as well, like creating little elevator communities, little lift communities, right? Even though you only have 2 minutes, it's just a connection, and it could set that person up for success or set you up for success for the day.
Do you think New Zealanders tend to step back a little bit? And do you think that might affect the way in which we engage in our communities?
Yeah, I think people are shy or reserved, or they're afraid of what people think of them, or I've noticed it's different here. It's taken me, I mean, I've been here 7 years and I'm still adjusting. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's all inside. No, and if you realize that, and this is one of my great realizations, is no one's thinking about me, everyone's thinking about themselves, right? So like, once you realize that, you're good. And yeah, you have to bring, I need it. I mean, I really, this is why it's so important, right? And I'm always putting myself out there, and I think it is because I had to leave my family at such a young age, and I had to survive. And so for me, I use it as a survival tool. And I moved to this country by myself. I didn't know anybody, and I've done that several times throughout my life. I lead a very agile life, right? Inspect and adapt. I've learned from my mistakes as much as I've learned from my triumph. So yeah, I just think it's important, because don't ask yourself what's the worst that could happen. What's the best that could happen, right? Because you may make a new friend, or you may see the person the next day, and you just never know.
That's funny you say that coming to New Zealand we're reserved. I come from England. I think New Zealand is the friendliest place and everyone talks to me. But maybe it's because I'm a chatty Cathy and I talk to everybody, but who knows?
Yeah, it could be your energy, and it is all relative, right? You just don't know. You don't know what people are bringing to work that day. Like, it's, yeah, I think it's just important to connect.
How would you say to connect around introverts? Like I'm an extrovert in a very introverted team, and trying to connect with them is like pushing something uphill. It's just hard work.
Yeah, look, it is hard work, but everyone in their own time. And this is why I think it is important to say everyone speaks once before anyone speaks twice, right? It's just creating these opportunities. And look, I run a lot of workshops and it's crickets a lot of the time, or you have like 4 people that are speaking the whole time. You have to accept that. But when you're in person, and this is what I mentioned on the podcast, like if you go into a room in a social setting or morning tea for in Auckland, whatever, or Wellington, whatever we're doing, put yourself in the middle of the room. You don't have to say anything, but stand in the middle of the room and wait for people to come to you, right? Because then that makes it easier for the introvert to, you don't have to initiate anything, but you have to receive, right? So just being open to receiving it is half the battle, and you're going to get halfway there. So I know it's a challenge. I mean, I deal with it all the time. And I say embrace the pause, right? Embrace the silence. Try not to break it. It's awkward, but you're just trying to help people, so they have to learn to help themselves as well. So yeah, try to really embrace that pause.
Hey Beth, we've got a lot of conversation about the My Voice survey, and one that always comes up is I feel like I belong. How do we get more people to feel like they belong?
Now, in your teams, I love a good team name. I love a good motto. I love a good mascot. These are all the little things. One of my first teams ever, we named ourselves Wolfpack, and we still have a WhatsApp channel, and that was 20 years ago almost, and we're still all connected. So there's a lot of positivity that comes out from a small branding, right? It's like using, what is your brand? How do you create that sense of belonging? And one team, one dream. I proposed to ANZ that we all be called bankers, and they didn't like that very much, but that's okay. But that's it. You just have to try. And you know what? Ask your people. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of love languages, right? But not everyone has the same love language. Some people like acts of service, some people like words of affirmation. Physical touch, I wouldn't recommend for this environment, but you just need to kind of ask them how they want to feel included. Just get that feedback, because everyone is a little bit different. But then you get your team together and you talk about it and you decide, and yeah, it can work. It really can. And we're also here to help you. Sorry, there's a shameless plug for the Agile coaches, but you do have professionals in this building that can help you with that stuff. Team building is our specialty.
Beth, I was really keen to ask a question around something that you touched upon, where you've got a really great team that are, working together really well and collaborating, all the rest of it, but then you've potentially got one person that's not on board, that is then harming the culture of that team. What's your experience of that, and what's your best bit of advice around how to tackle that?
So always start with a one-on-one conversation. If the team wants to bring it up in a retro, we would never say, retros are blameless, right? So it's never, you did this thing. It's, wow, that behavior is not conducive to us being successful, right? So if the team wants to bring it up, that's great. That means you have great psychological safety. But if the individual is unaware, and we've all had this, I think at one point or another in our careers, but it's a one-on-one conversation. Again, do you think your behavior is helping us get better, or is your behavior helping us, or holding us back? And you can give specific examples. I'm a real big fan of SBI. So it's what is it? Situation, behavior, impact, right? So you make it about the thing, not the person. And so, yeah, there's ways there's many different ways to approach it, but it's always an individual conversation. And then escalation, right? So if that person is continually demonstrating that bad behavior, you talk to their people leader, right? And they may just need some coaching, but awareness is always the first thing. Because a lot of people, I can tell you, hand on heart, no one comes to work and says, I'm really going to mess with someone's day today, right? That's not a thing. It's not intentional. We hope, okay? But so you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, but also make them aware, because awareness, transparency, that's the only way to address it and mitigate and improve.
Thank you.
There's my awkward pause. Do you like what I did there?
Yeah, crickets. I noticed. I love it. Thanks, Ruth. Well done.
If you would like to ask a question, just pop it in the chat if you are feeling a little bit shy to ask your question. Anyone else has a question before I go on to my next one?
And I know this was a little bit different than our normal format.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get it.
So, Beth, you talk about resources being a trigger word, which is an absolutely trigger word for me as well. When we talk about language, how important is language when we come into communities as well?
Oh, it's so important. Again, it's, resources, just the word, right? Resources are meant to be expended, right? I would love to just see a shift to talent. And I know, Susie, you and we use that language all the time. We try to stay away from resources, but there's a great book by David Marquet called Leadership is Language. Highly, highly, highly recommend. It's a great read. I've read it like 4 times. It goes into, language. With language comes bias, right? So if you're a leader, or if you're a leader on a team, a project lead, whatever it is, you're bringing all this bias with you. We can't help it. That's just life experience. But if you can train your brain to use more inclusive language, more intent-based language, right? And I know that, again, we're in a highly regulated, highly risk-averse culture here at the bank, but it changes the way people look and the way people feel, the way the organization will feel, the culture. Language and culture go hand in hand. And if you have people using, we call them red words, okay, like drive, must, it's all those very forceful words where there's no wiggle room. So we need to open up the way we speak and the way we communicate to be more inclusive, and again, make it communication, not one way. It's also why I hate the word showcase, right? Like, because we're not doing high kicks on the stage. You know what I mean? It's a review, a proper sprint review or product review is more about the dialogue. It's the feedback that's important. So the way you approach communication, it's about getting shared understanding, not just spewing words at people and just assuming they're going to understand. It's really about that dialogue and the feedback. So yeah, it's so important. I can't emphasize that enough. And it really, again, it's the foundation of culture, but it's also your brand and your leadership shadow and all of those things. People will listen to what you say, but they are going to do what you do, right? They're going to behave in a way that they see you behaving. So you have to be very mindful of it. Thanks.
And another little extra plug for BVA. We've got a list of books if you would like to understand what other books are there to further your reading around agility and culture under the BVA Resource Hub and Confluence.
Yeah, and we're always happy to come and talk to the teams as well.
Have a chat. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier.
Any other questions? No, well, we might call that time then if there's no further questions. Thank you so much, Beth, for sharing your family history. I learned some more stuff about you today. It's very fascinating, and appreciate your time you put into the talk as well. So thank you.
Thanks
for everyone for coming along.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you very much.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.